Straight out of the gate, I'm going to say that Galactic Junk League is a fun game. It's interesting and it feels rewarding to play. The basic premise of the game is that you build a ship out of blocks. Then you jump into a match to see how it performs against other people's ships. Whether you end up wrecking people or getting wrecked, the game is pretty fun. The match ends and you find yourself back at the start of the loop, except now that you're back in the hangar, you have a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more money, and a little bit more experience, and so you start making changes, just a few blocks at a time, and then you loop this process of iterating upon your ship. You build, you fight, you rethink, and you do this over and over, and you keep going through this incredibly rewarding and compelling and exciting gameplay loop until you've gained so much money and so much experience that by the end of a play session you've made this incredible cube of death with guns sticking out from every angle, and that's okay because you're winning games, except it's not okay because it's just a cube with guns strapped to it, because the game punishes creativity to some extent. And that's the problem with the game, kind of. It has all these things going for it, all these themes, ideas and mechanics, but it's hamstrung, it's hobbled, and it's crippled by all its problems. In answer to the question, should you play this game? I say, absolutely, why not? If you think it looks interesting, then you should play it. It's free, it'll cost you nothing. But another part of me would say, don't play this game. You'll only be disappointed for how good it could have been or how good it should be. We're going to start here in the meat of the review with the things I like about the game. And the first thing I like is the aesthetic. And in all honesty, it's not even particularly well done, but it just kind of works for the game. It has thematic consistency across the UI, the sound, and the graphics. I don't really know how to describe it, but nothing feels out of place. It all feels like it belongs, and that, in my opinion, means the aesthetic has been done correctly. It all just sort of fits together nicely in a neat little package. I also love the core gameplay loop. I love building a ship. I love taking it to battle. I love getting my arse kicked or kicking someone else's arse and then going back to the hangar, making revisions to it, and then buying new parts and then rebuilding it again, going back out, getting my arse kicked, and just doing that, the whole process for a couple of hours is wonderful, wonderful fun, and it's really enjoyable. Taken without all of its flaws, there's a very fun experience to be found here. But my, oh my, the flaws, they come in droves and they hammer the point home until you're in submission, and that initial joy and excitement has been refined into a diamond-like ball of regret, frustration, and remorse. What frustrates me the most about the game is that there's an amazing fun little experience here. There's a really rewarding and interesting distraction, but it's overshadowed, it's obscured and obfuscated by this crap that sits on the game and ruins it all. And all this baggage on the game that gets into every nook and cranny, this baggage, it comes from a few places. One of those is a diabolical, disgusting, and devious place that you'll all be very familiar with. And that place is the free-to-play model. It just sits on every mechanic and it never lets you get away from it. It never gives you a break like an overzealous nihilist. It just holds its hand under your nose saying, "Where's the money, Lebowski?" And this is where the game dies, in my opinion. The game forgets that it's free. The game forgets that free players are supposed to get a complete game and that paying players are supposed to get status, style, first dibs on new content in that complete game with a little bit of convenience stirred in. And that's just one fatal flaw. Another glaring, horrifying, horrendous, and horrible flaw with the game is related to the business model, but it's not exactly the business model. You might have heard this thing called seal clubbing, noob stomping, or as I personally like to call it, the fun wall. And make no mistake, this wall is not fun. This wall is designed to keep fun out. It is designed so that the people who have been playing longer have an insurmountable, inherent advantage. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against advantages for players who've played longer or unlocked more stuff or use a different playstyle. But when you're loading up your first few games and there's a ship in that game that will shoot you once and kill you instantly, then I have a problem with your game. Either you need to fix your matchmaking, you need to fix your balance, or you need to fix the fundamental progression model. Something has to give here in order for the game to reach its true potential and not be left broken and forgotten in the hall of free-to-play failures. I think the real take home here that doesn't just apply to this game is that there are so many amazing experiences out there that are just being hamstrung in their ability to be successful and profitable by the very decisions that were designed to make those games profitable and successful. And you know what? That breaks my heart. It breaks my heart that time after time and time again, the same mistakes keep being made over and over. These unsustainable short-term whale-centric market strategies have littered the annals of gaming with great games destroyed by their poor business models. Some of my favorite games of all time are free-to-play games, but when you're treated just like another bubble in a sheet of bubble paper that someone else gets to pop, but you never get to pop them back unless you spend an absolutely outrageous amount of time or money on the game, I personally lose interest, and so do, in my opinion, the majority of people. And I haven't even begun to criticize the balance of the game, which, with a cursory glance after 3 to 5 hours of playing, anyone could surmise either that through incompetence, deliberate action, or some combination of the two, it seems that every single element of the game's balance feeds into making the previous problems even more egregious, even more atrocious, and even more, dare I say, cancerous for the game. You have an inequality of strategies where a single playstyle completely dominates to the point of everything else not even being remotely viable. Now, sure enough, it's probably not fair to include game balance as a criticism for an early access title, considering there's going to be patches, new content, and so on and so forth. However, I'm not criticizing the game in 6 months after a bunch of patches. I'm criticizing the game right now. And right now, once you hit the higher levels of gameplay, the game devolves into blobs of ships with sniper plasma cannons firing at each other. This often means that the winner of the game is typically decided by which team has the least number of new players on their team, who end up being crushed under the boot of these ultra long range plasma guns. This dynamic creates an incredibly unrewarding scenario where the single ship type that gets extra range on its weapons completely dominates the metagame, because the game just doesn't give you the tools to deal with them, or the tools they do give you are inadequate to deal with them. I tried to make a high-speed fighter with all sorts of weapons to counter this plasma ball strategy, and I was met with some initial success, but in the end, as the number of people in plasma death cubes increased and I found myself unable to beat them, I joined them, and I made my own plasma death cube. That's why I think the balance of the game leaves something to be desired, and that just might be the understatement of the year in my opinion, and it's only January, for God's sake. My final verdict on the game is, I love it. I love the game. I love the game, and I hate the game. I hate it to pieces. I hope they fix it. I'm optimistic and I'm pessimistic about it. Look, if the game sounds like fun, you should play it. If all the baggage I talked about though sounds like too much for you, just avoid it for now. Maybe come back and check it out in a few months. When you consider that it's a silly little spaceship shooter where you build ships out of blocks, you can forgive its lack of depth and maybe look past its flaws and have a few hours of fun before uninstalling it and never playing it again. In my opinion, it needs more time in development. It needs more balancing. It needs adjustments to its free-to-play model. But at the core here, there is a fun game. There's a fun game to be had here. Make no mistake. And honestly, who among us wouldn't want to play what is essentially a player versus player gummy ships from Kingdom Hearts? Thank you very much for watching. Don't subscribe to me if you like this video. I don't do reviews very often, but if you want to watch me doing Let's Plays, be my guest. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.